Hi, guys. So, just like a little announcement, if anyone is interested, I am on Buy Me a Coffee. It's like Patreon, but I think it's better than Patreon because Patreon likes to deactivate your account with no explanation and will not email you back with an explanation or anything. And with research the last couple of days, I'm not the only one. So I moved on with my life and Get Me a Coffee is where I am at. If anyone is interested, bonus content, behind the scenes, there are tiers, or you can just go day by day. It doesn't matter. Go check it out. I promise you, it's not scary. And this is a haunted podcast. How ironic. Anyway, this episode is a two-parter because I have way too much information. So what I'm going to do is do today's episode, and then I'm going to upload the second half on Tuesday, and then we will have our regular Friday episode. And next Friday, we will be talking about the Dog Man because that was requested. So I am doing the Dog Man next Friday. So onward. Salem, Massachusetts, one of my favorite places in the entire world. I love that place so much. I've been trying to get my husband to move us out there since 2022. So far, it has not gone in my favor. But that's fine. I'll just go there as often as I possibly can because I love that place. Anyway, first location in Salem, Massachusetts, the Merchant House. The land was owned by George Corwin, the High Sheriff of Essex County. He's also known as the Strangler from the Salem witch hysteria. Corwin was a sadistic 25-year-old with a reputation for strangulation. 25 years old and already has a reputation for strangulation. If that doesn't say Ted Bundy, I don't know what does. He was the nephew of magistrates Jonathan Corwin and Walt Winthrop, and also the son-in-law of Judge Bartholomew Gadney. How he got married, if it was out of love, I don't believe it. With a reputation of the strangler, you would have to force me to marry that man. Rumor has it the sheriff would tie the necks of his victims to their ankles. This is not proven. It's just allegation. He signed arrest warrants for those accused of witchcraft, chose the execution site where 19 were hanged, and that is called Proctor's Ledge. And Proctor's Ledge is about a mile outside of Salem, and I believe it's a park now. You might even see a spirit or two. And if you go there ghost hunting, take the salt. He was also charged with the transportation of witches, and among those were Rebecca Nurse, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, Sarah Wilds, and Sarah Good. Bridget Bishop was transported in a cart flanked by guards and mounted officers. So she was being taken to the gallows in this cart, surrounded by guards on foot and horses. If that doesn't say paranoid, I don't know what does. He is directly responsible for the deaths of 19 and the arrests of over 200 people. He was ordered by the court to oversee the interrogation of Giles Corey, and Corey's punishment was whatever Corwin wanted. I am going to pronounce this wrong. I do not speak French. Please don't yell at me. I am trying. So the punishment was called peine forte et dure, meaning strong and harsh punishment. And it required a victim's chest to be bound with a board and set by rock or stone to crush the person. This was intended for the victim to plead guilty or not guilty. Giles Corey, honestly, is the GOAT, okay? This man spent 2 days in a field with this board on his chest, and they would come out every once in a while and ask him to go to court. And all he would say was more rocks. And he did this for his wife because she was accused of witchcraft. And he knew that she was not a witch and he would not accuse her of being one in court. By the time Corey was officially pressed, Corey's tongue had pressed out of his mouth and Corwin forced it back in with his cane. This poor man was just jailed, pressed to death, and now Corwin just takes the bottom of his cane, shoves his tongue back into his mouth. It is said that Giles Corey cursed Corwin with his last breath. This curse is known to affect any Salem sheriff. Sheriffs have since died or resigned due to cardiac complications. The Great Salem Fire of 1914 is attributed to the curse as well as the premature retirement of Sheriff Cahill, who was affected by various maladies that the doctor could not determine a cause. Joshua Ward, a sea captain merchant, bought Corwin's land, and in 1784, he had a 3-story federal-style house built with the view of the South River. As one of the earliest homes in Salem, and the property was so impressive, George Washington requested to stay in this house in 1789, and a bust of Washington was placed in the second-story window, making passersby think they saw the ghost of George Washington. Now, the Strangler alleged that Corwin tortured victims in his witch dungeon, but never proven. He was buried on the property in 1696 at 30 years old, and some believe he gave in to the Corey's curse. He died of cardiac arrest. His body was later relocated to Broad Street Cemetery, and he's normally seen over the fireplace. And legend says you can feel the Strangler's suffocating grip. So the Merchant House is now a hotel, and Corwin still haunts it, and people have claimed to feel the Strangler's grip on their throats. Giles Corey, some say he also haunts the Merchant. He's blamed for knocking over candlesticks, trash cans getting overturned, deadbolts open and close on their own. Is he lashing out at the sheriff? Dunno. Maybe he is. I know I would be. Do that to me, I'll haunt you for the rest of your life. The Lady in Black is the third ghost at the Merchant. No one is sure what she wants or where she came from. Everyone who has seen her has had similar sightings. A female in black costume with blacker curls. She's been described as translucent, as if she was made of glass. And some believe she was one of Corwin's victims. And that very well could be. But also there was no proof. But back then, it was easier to get away with things because science. Gotta love science. Next location, the Green Gables. It was constructed at the height of Puritan New England by Captain John Turner on the coast of Massachusetts Bay. By 1782, the Ingersoll family moved in, and Nathaniel Hawthorne, a relative, would begin to visit his cousin Susanna, and he visited her often. Nathaniel Hawthorne is also why the Green Gables is so famous, because he is the author of The House of Seven Gables. And if you ever get to go and visit this place, it is absolutely gorgeous, and the garden is beautiful, especially when everything's in bloom. Oh my gosh, this house is amazing. As a boy, Nathaniel injured his leg and was restricted to the home for 2 years. Susanna would tell Nathaniel of the history of the house and the history of Salem during this time. And he was fascinated by these stories. And that is why he then went on to write The House of Seven Gables. And he wrote this novel based on the stories that Susanna told him. Her stories on the Salem witch trials captivated him the most in good and bad ways. He was particularly interested in his great-grandfather, John Hawthorne, who had a direct role in the event. John Hawthorne was a chief judge who presided over the trials that led to 19 executions based on flimsy claims of witchcraft. This is why Nathaniel changed his name by adding a W. He spelled his name Hath and then turned it into Hawth to try to separate himself from association with his great-grandfather. In his novel Pinchian, he condemned a fictional version of John, Judge Pinchian. Nathaniel was extremely troubled by what his ancestor had done and felt his actions left an almost supernatural inheritance. And he felt that he couldn't rid himself of it. And he alludes to this curse or this supernatural inheritance in his foreword in the Scarlet Letter. But curse or no, some believe the malevolent forces caused by John Hawthorne during the trials have remained at the house. So visitors claim to see shadow people and hear ominous murmuring, especially late at night. References to a general strange atmosphere that surrounds the property. A small boy is said to love to play in the attic and make noises during tours and peeks out windows on the upper floors. The boy has also been seen scrambling up the staircase to only vanish after being followed into the attic. Some claim with certainty this is Julian, Nathaniel's son, but there is no record of Julian ever being on the property. The most common sighting at the house is of Susanna, and she roams the halls of her former home. There have been claims of a woman seen in white peeking through the windows, watching as they enter through the grounds gardens. Sarah Good is also there. She reportedly cursed Reverend Nicholas Noyes at her hanging and later died of an aneurysm. Nathaniel's grandfather is who sentenced Sarah to death. He was hateful towards all involved, never recanted for the executions he was responsible for, and even though all accused were later vindicated of any wrongdoing, he still would not take responsibility. Now we move on to the witch house. For me, the witch house is arguable. I want to say controversial, but that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'll get there. So the witch house, it's the only structure still standing in Salem that has a direct connection to the trials. And eventually it's moved from its original spot to where it is today. It was built circa 1675 and is the residence of Judge Jonathan Corwin in 1692. And is when he moved in. He served on the court of Oyer and Terminer that ultimately led 19 people to the gallows. And during this period, the accused were brought to Corwin's home for pre-trial examinations. Bridget Bishop, who was under the previous judge Saltonstall, she was the first person executed, and her examination was held before Hawthorne and Corwin in the Corwin home. Bridget was 60 when she was hanged. She was just an old woman trying to live her life. She was known for her wild and temperament dress, which led to the accusations. And her execution led Saltonstall to resign from the responsibility of sending people to their deaths. Bridget just liked colors. I mean, if you look at pictures of people during this time, they wore pretty bland clothing. And Bridget was just living her best life. And nobody liked that. Apparently, when you do what you want, wear what you want, you get accused of witchcraft and executed for it. And fun fact, I guess, they had a law that prohibited hanging, and they repealed that for the witch trials. Fun times. So in the house, people have reported hearing disembodied voices and feel chills crawling up and down their body as they navigate the home. Ghost Adventures investigated the house in season 4, episode 14. Christian Day, a renowned warlock in the area. He's in New Orleans now, but he still has a shop in Salem. He has also said that the house is not actually haunted. Now, I've heard this claim before, and if you've seen my TikTok, you know that I am part of this community, and I believe him when he says that because I felt nothing. I have been to the witch house, and I personally did not feel anything, and I am sensitive, but I'm also not going to discredit others' experiences. So you go visit the witch house and let me know what you feel. Because also, during the investigation, Christian Day called Bridget's ghost into the house because there are no ghosts in the house. So I guess it can go either way. Maybe it is haunted and the activity isn't super high. I don't know. You tell me. Now we move on to the Salem jail. Built in 1684 and then later renovated and remodeled into a house. I know I want my spooky old haunted house, but I'm not sure if I want a haunted house that was built on top of an old jail where a lot of people died suffering, because that could go either way. So the jail was built mostly out of wood, but was replaced altogether with newer stone in 1783. According to the Salem Witch Museum, the jail had dirt floors, it was lice-ridden, dark, dismal, and stank of tobacco. Iron bars were over the windows to keep specters accused from flying free. Shackles were used to hold the condemned, young, old, and ill. They did not discriminate when it came to the shackles. The imprisoned were charged room and board. It was 2 shillings and 6 pence a week. And then there was a fee for their chains. So they're in jail. They're not working. They're not making any sort of income. And they're going to charge them for being in jail, where they were forced into the jail on false claims. The punishments just keep on punishing. Martha Corey, Giles' wife, was there when she was excommunicated before her hanging on September 22nd. This is also where Giles Corey was when he was taken to the open field to be pressed to death in an effort to make him stand trial. Again, he was not going to accuse his wife of witchcraft because she was not a witch. Margaret Jacobs had been accused, and in fear, she confessed. She accused multiple others, including her grandfather. George Jacobs, her grandfather, she was 17. She, again, accused him of witchcraft, and she wrote him a letter asking for forgiveness as he awaited execution. People back in this time were very paranoid, and once some sort of hysteria takes over, they're brutal when it comes to getting people to admit things, even if they didn't even commit those crimes. It was hard. And if you were accused and put on trial, the likelihood of them believing that you are not guilty was very slim, because you have multiple people screaming witch, even if you're not. And this whole hysteria was crazy because it started with 3 bored little girls. Now, they don't officially know how the hysteria started, but in my opinion, from what I know, these girls were bored. They picked on Bridget, and it just escalated from there. That's just my opinion. So it operates today as the Witch Dungeon Museum. And there's a plaque, and it says, "Original bill for keep of witches, curios found in the house, copies of letters from those confined in the dungeon, articles worn by prisoners, Hawthorne family coffee pot, Charles Darwin letter, library, and antiques. Many prisoners died due to the abysmal conditions, and rumors have spread of encounters with apparitions within the walls and a guard that is carrying a clipboard. He still overlooks the prisoners. Now, are those ghosts there because they're tormented, angry, upset, or is it a residual haunting? And if you don't know what I mean by residual haunting, it's basically there's no ghosts. It's just an imprint of a traumatic event that just plays on a loop over and over again. So this time was extremely traumatic for people. I would not be shocked if it was a residual haunting. But again, I also wouldn't be shocked if it was an actual haunting. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it's an actual haunting because trauma can cause the person to stay as a ghost, an apparition, a spirit. And sometimes, if it's traumatic enough, they might not know they're dead and they're just suffering. So it can go either way, I think. I think that there are a lot of residual hauntings because of the trauma, but I also do believe that some of the victims are still haunting because they're upset by what happened to them. They were falsely accused. Part 2 will be up on Tuesday, and we will talk about Dogman next Friday, which is interesting because I've heard of Dogman, but I never really looked into it. So I'm excited to dive in and see what Dogman is about. So this is me signing off. If you go ghost hunting, don't forget the salt. And as always, stay spooky.